Hello and welcome to Podsongs, where we interview inspirational people in service to others as inspiration for a new song. Today, my co-host and musical collaborator is Reverend Peyton, and his guest is the American actor and director, Levar Burton. Hello, Reverend.
How's it going? How you doing, Jack? How's Italy?
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the weather like in Italy right now?
It's pretty sunny. It's like 16 degrees.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Do the math on the Fahrenheit to Celsius.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I tried to calculate as I was talking to you, but no, it's a jumper weather. Yeah.
Cool. Excellent.
And
That's
whereabouts
about.
are you in whereabouts are you?
So I'm in southern Indiana. So
Okay.
Brown County, Indiana, in the hills of southern Indiana. It's the least populated county in the state of Indiana. So it's a very hilly, beautiful place. But right now we're having some pretty nasty weather right now. It's been raining for a couple days and it's just warm enough to not freeze.
Okay.
So it's pretty cold.
Well, I'm lucky to catch you there because we've been a year setting up this interview. You've spent about 250 days a year on the road.
Yeah, we do a lot of shows.
Yeah.
We do a lot of shows.
Yeah.
That's kind of the deal for well, if you're going to be a professional musician in this day and age, you really have to take it on the road. You really do. That's part of it now. And luckily, I love it. So it's good.
Well, I know you say that, but at the end of a long stretch, it's nice to come home.
That's true. That's true. It is. It's kind of funny. The older I get, the more I appreciate that. Honestly, there was a period of time in my life when I didn't want to be home at all.
Yeah.
Now I realized during COVID that I loved being on the road, and I missed it terribly when I couldn't do it. So I know that, but I also do appreciate being home and seeing family. And the poet Robert Bly, he said that you have to at least live outside of your art 50% of the time so you have something to write about. And I think that's probably pretty true.
Yes, definitely. Well, the last enforced layoff for you was very productive. You made a wonderful album during COVID lockdown.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I felt like I needed to do something, I just couldn't just sit around and be like, well, I guess I'm going to take some time off or do something else. I have a friend who is a former Green Beret, and he said to me, he said, well, Rev, you got to figure out who you are, if not this. And I said, and I think I came to a different conclusion than he wanted me to. He wanted introspection. I said, well, I don't know if there is a me without this. So I've just got to figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
And so we did the live stream thing, and we made a lot of music in terms of recorded music, and tried to stay productive, because I felt like, well, if we stop doing this, then maybe we're no longer a band, And I'm an artist. Artists have to create art. That's just all there is to it. Money, financial situation, timing, be damned. Artists have to make art.
Yeah, but you have a long history of overcoming difficulties, hospitalization being a big one.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you talking about my hands?
Well, yeah, there's many. The operation to remove the scar tissue.
Yeah. So my hands, actually, that was a really devastating thing for me. And it's kind of interesting because I'll start a little earlier. When I was born a type of breech where I was folded in half. So instead of being first like a baby's supposed to be, or feet first like a breech baby is, I was butt first. And so I had been folded in half the entire time that I was inside of my mother, and that caused a lot of problems. I have a condition called hip dysplasia, and when I was young, it was a lot more severe. And until I couldn't really run straight until I was an adult. Probably close to 30 years old. I couldn't really run straight without having to think about it. When I was a kid, I really waddled when I walked. It was tough for me to even walk normally, and it especially came out when I ran. When I was 6 years old, I I went to, my mom took me to see a doctor, and I remember getting down to my underwear, and I had Superman's or something on the underwear, and I remember being very self-conscious about that. And they had me walk up and down like the hallway, which was a public hallway, right? And the nurses and the doctors, they watch me walk, and then I come back in the room, and I'm still in my underwear, and they sit me up on the table, and the doctor comes in. He says, "Well, son, you're never going to win any races." And that's what they said. Now, they probably would have put braces on my legs. There would have been physical therapy, but they just sent my mom home and said, "Oh, hopefully he'll grow out of it." And it was, at the time, I didn't really even realize something was wrong with me, until I was told this. But when I got to school, the kids let me know something was wrong with me, as kids are wanting to.
Kids are cruel.
And I realized that, the normal thing that a boy is supposed to do, and play sports, wasn't really in the cards for me. When I discovered the guitar, it changed my life. I felt like, wow, I have something that is that is mine. I can do. Maybe my legs aren't, quote, normal.
Yeah.
So I'm supposed to use my hands. Maybe that's what the universe has designed for me. And I threw myself into that with every
12 hours a day, was it? Practicing
at least. And with fiber in my being, I threw myself into it. So then when I turned about 18, I started having problems with my hands, which was absolutely devastating to me, because I was like, who am I now?
Yeah.
I went to a doctor who told me, he said, "Well, you're probably never going to be able to play the guitar again like you used to. So you need to find something else to do." And I was pretty well lost. I was pretty well lost. And it was devastating, but I ended up finding a doctor that performed some surgery. And in that time, I've learned a lot about myself too. I have gone kind of, pretty religious in terms of taking care of my hands. Eating to keep inflammation down. I do stretches and exercises and everything I can to keep my hands healthy, because I found out that I have a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and the people the people that are going to be listening to this on a podcast can't see, but you're on Zoom, so you can see how my hands. All the joints in my body bend that way, and it's a hyper flexibility thing, and it's probably part of the reason why that style of breech was such a problem for me when I was born. It causes your entire, like, all the joints in your body, all the collagen in your body to be hyper flexible. And it can be, they say it's a spectrum, as things often are. And there are people that have this condition that are confined to a wheelchair. And then there are people that have a mild case of this that hardly can tell the difference. And me, I'm somewhere in the middle toward the space where they say a lot of athletes and musicians end up. And it's been kind of a blessing and a curse. I think more of a blessing, because there are certain things I can do. You're a guitar player, right?
Yep.
So I can stretch 8 frets on a guitar.
Wow.
Without raising my hand, and on a good day on a Gibson scale, I can get 9. And my hands aren't really that big. I mean, they're not small, but they're not big, but they just can open so wide. It's insane. Like, look, you can kind of see that. I usually can make my pinky and my pointer finger almost straight when I open my hand up. Isn't that wild?
That's crazy. And you play the bass with the thumb as well?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So but when I was a kid, this was crazy stuff. Here I am. I'm this little kid that waddles around, and I'm obsessed with old blues on the guitar, and I was a strange little guy, and it's I've somehow turned it into a career, but it's
I think with every fiber of your being, that overcoming obstacles is a superpower. And I think that's because you only have one melodic instrument in your band, the guitar. There's a washboard and drums. So that makes you you have to make every song different, because
That's right.
if you have all the sounds, if you have so many melodic instruments, you can make the song start to sound similar. I know with many bands, but with you guys, I notice every song has has so much your vocal variety, rhythm, melody. You really, from these obstacles, you create wonderful things.
Well, thank you. When you are only one melodic instrument on stage, if you're not careful, it can also sound very much the same. And I try to really, really bring dynamics in, and I try to take fingerstyle, the original like sort of fingerstyle country blues guitar playing, and I try to take it to new places. Right. I mean, when you go back and you listen to some of the great legends like Charlie Patton and Son House and Mississippi John Hurt, Fred McDowell and Robert Johnson, these guys live their songs, right? They live that stuff. And if you just go through and you just kind of regurgitate that, it's been done, right? And then no one can speak to those songs the way those fellas did, because they lived them. And I've always looked up to people that really kind of forge their own path and have their own sound, both musically and in all art disciplines. I think, forging your own style in some way is maybe the hardest thing to do in art. You can spend a lot of time, become virtuosic at a music or an instrument or painting or whatever, but in all of the millions of people that create, if you can somehow forge your own sound out of all, I think that might be the hardest thing to do. And it's something that I've really tried to do. And when you pick up a guitar and someone can hear that that it's you, I think that's kind of neat. We were, as a musician now, there's a lot of these music festivals on cruises that take place. And it's not like the normal cruise ship thing where you go and you play for the people on a cruise. It's like these big music festivals where you go out, and I mean, we're going to be on one here soon. It's the legendary Rhythm and Blues Cruise. And we've done this before in the past, and with, people like Buddy Guy and Kenny Wayne Shepherd and Taj Mahal and Keb Mo. And on this one, it's going to be, I think, Taj and Keb Mo and just some of the biggest names in blues, right? And we were on this one time, and I started getting a bunch of messages on my phone. Your phone doesn't really work. You get like a little bit of Wi-Fi here and there, and it comes in. I started getting these messages, and one of them was a music reporter who was messaging me, and he said, "Hey, Rev, I've got to talk to you." So I tried to find a way to talk to him the next time we went to port, and he said he was listening to the radio, and a John Mellencamp song came on, and he said to me, he said, "Hey, look, like, that's you on the guitar, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah, it's me." And I thought that was pretty cool. There's a song that John had me play on. It's just me and him. It's called Eyes on the Prize if he wants to listen to it, but it's me on the guitar and John on vocals. But several people were able to pick out that it was me on the guitar. And I thought that was
a big compliment. Yeah. Yeah. So when's the next record coming up?
Well, we've already got an acoustic record kind of in the bag, and we have some special guests on it. And I know that since you are dealing with a lot of special guests and what you do, that can kind of take the timeline out of your hands and into the hands of the universe. So we were kind of waiting to get a few things back. But my part of it's all recorded and done. So I'm excited for people to hear it. And in fact, I'm already on the next thing. I've got songs that I'm working on for the next like full big damn band record, and we're in my studio down here in my basement, and because I have this now, I've been able to create a lot of singles and things. So we're going to be putting out singles as they come up on digitally and whatnot. I'm trying to create, and trying to create in ways that we normally wouldn't be able to or wouldn't have done. And as music changes, I just want to change with it in whatever way. When we started doing this, people were still listening to CDs, right? And now the world has changed, and I will just continue to change. I always say this: I love music so much. If you didn't go to play in clubs and bars and venues and theaters, and if one day they stopped having music there and it was at Claire's in the mall, then I would just go set up amongst all the hair barrettes and hair ties, and I would play at Claire's and all. I don't care. I absolutely love this stuff so much. It's all about that for me.
Wow. Yeah, you're the hardest working man in show business, but also, but because you love it, because you know, that enthusiasm is what makes it sound so wonderful. So,
Thank you. I
yeah,
do. I love it. And COVID taught me a valuable lesson on that. You know, you start
yeah,
thinking that maybe we better over here, or the grass looks greener. And COVID
yeah.
taught me, no, this is it for me. I love this.
No, also with the hands and the operations, and so many times you've seen your life, you know, your possibilities. I also wanted to ask how Breezy's doing, because I saw this video of her hanging out of a car.
Well, yeah, that was terrible, man. That was terrible. Yeah, it's she's doing a lot better. I mean,
Yeah.
really a lot better. And that it could have ended up a lot worse. And it's hard to explain. The short version is that, you know, she was dragged by a car and
Yeah.
200 yards down the road, and it was just terrible. You know, it was just terrible the way it all happened. And you know, sometimes these people come in and out of your lives, and they're bad or irresponsible people,
Right.
and you just can't let them define even
Yeah.
those moments in your life. You know, that's part of it. You can't let them define, because there's a lot more good people in this
Mm.
world, and there are wonderful, great people, and you just can't let those people come into your life and then
No.
define it. So
Well, you're so lucky to have Breezy. I mean, your wife chores with you on the road and is an essential part of the band, and so
she's a
yeah,
genius too. She's a
yeah,
genius. People have no idea how smart she is. Part of the secret to our success has been her genius. She just
mhm,
is. She never forgets the names. She never forgets any places. She never forgets anything. It's pretty unbelievable. I am usually somewhere between awe and freaked out by how smart she is.
yeah. No, she's definitely, you get that sense that, you know, you're such a you're Reverend Peyton, but it's the big damn band. It's really a
She always, I always say this, and it's that I'm fully ready to admit it, is that she constantly comes up with great, wonderful ideas, and I get the credit for them.
yeah.
You know, and mostly it's those empathetic things. She'll say, "Hey, we should really do this for these people, or we should do this to be a good thing." And
Oh,
I'm always
that's
like,
right.
"Oh yeah, that's wonderful. You're right. We should. Why didn't I think of that?" And then we do it, and then people are like, "Reverend Peyton, you're such a great guy," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, no." No, I'm not in
Yeah.
that same way. You know, she's the one that actually she's the empathetic
Mhm.
part one of the two of us. She's the one
Well,
with
we
the
need that. We need these women in our lives, you know.
and I would be I would first off I would have squandered all of our money on guitars, and then the second thing is I would have missed out on almost every opportunity we have to do something that's more I guess just like it's just hard to explain, but she can read people, man. She can tell when someone is dealing with something in ways that I like are almost otherworldly. So she can feel that, and she'll say, "It would be really great if we did this because this person needs this." And I'm like, "How do you
Wow.
know?" And then we find out, oh, she was able to tell. It's almost like being with the mentalist or living with Sherlock Holmes. You could read people in that way. It's pretty incredible.
Mm. Well, that's also what I want this podcast to be about, is people in service to others. So you've chosen as your guest the actor Levar Burton. Why Levar?
Well, I think that there are very few actors and maybe artists of any kind that have had their entire career be so positive. You look at him from the beginning of his career up until now, and it seems like every role he has taken up has been 100% inspirational. And you know, that's one of the things I want to find out is that did he seek these out, these inspirational things, or did inspiration come to him and then he lived up to it? Okay, I mean, you go back to roots. You start at roots, and like I live my entire life. I have lived in America that where roots existed. And Roots taught America about what slavery really was. It got rid of the mythology, and Kunta Kinte became a symbol of freedom across all races and creeds, and in so doing, educated the American population as to what slavery really was, because there was a lot of mythology that it was not. The realities were buried deep, and Roots and Kunta Kinte were able to unbury those realities and put them on national television at a time when there was 3 channels. It's pretty incredible, right? So I got to live in an America that existed the entire time. So I've my whole life has benefited from that. I never got to live in the America before that, where people were so blind to it. At least now, if they are, it's almost willfully so, right? Mm-hmm. And then I grew up with Reading Rainbow as my favorite television show. My mom was able to teach me to read by the time I was 3, and I was reading books, encyclopedias, anything I could get my hands on. So by the time I'm in school, kindergarten, 1st grade, I can read and nobody else can, and I didn't understand it, and I felt like an alien. But here is this guy on television, on PBS, every single day. And not only is he promoting reading, but it's cool to read. He made me feel okay about it. And he made me want to read. And I voraciously read. And it had affected the course of my life. And
I taught you to read. That's just like a...
Oh, I mean, it's unbelievable. You know, I mean, well, here's this guy that has, you know, I say it a lot. My mom taught me how to read, but Levar Burton made it cool and made it okay, and then allowed me to really throw myself into it. I watched Reading Rainbow every single day of my life. There was a period of time when I was young, I watched that show every single day of my life. And then he comes on in the evenings, Geordie LaForge, Lieutenant Commander Geordie LaForge. He comes on, and here is his character. I don't think people understand this, what this meant to certain people. He's a character. He's the smartest person on the ship. He's always level-headed. He's always clear. He's always working hard, and he's blind. And I don't know if there has been a character on a show of that level, but prior, and few since, that were disabled in a similar fashion. And while I am, of course, not blind, when I was a kid, I saw that he was able to rise above that in my own situation, especially with my hips, my legs, the way I walked. I literally I've had these conversations in my brain, like, okay, like he's able to do these things, and here I am. It's like gave me that confidence that, okay, my hands are still they still work well. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's where my focus will lie. I can still be a valuable person. And I don't think people realize just how strong that character was for a lot of people, and how important it is. And everything he did. I mean, he continues to with the LeVar Reeds, and I mean, it's just nonstop, right? I mean, everything that he's done has been inspirational. And I don't know if you can go back and find another actor that their entire career seems like it's just one inspirational thing after another. I mean, there's a lot of great actors. We could talk all day about actors that have done great, wonderful things and made great art. But have any of them ever come through with that kind of inspiration from the beginning of their career to now? And then he continues to. I mean, I don't know his situation personally, but I know that if he wanted to, he could probably retire somewhere and enjoy the fruits of a successful career. And he continues to work, and he continues to inspire. He's still reading books. He's working on a new children's program called the Sound Detectives, I believe. And maybe we can ask him about that too. But I mean, it's nonstop, being especially inspirational for children. You know, he's an educator. And Jack, it's hard to explain just how big a deal he was to me, especially when I was a little kid.
It's wonderful to hear, it's really, because that's you coming, I see him through your eyes now, because to me, I'm English. I didn't grow up with any of this.
Yeah.
To me, it's the guy from Star Trek, one of the actors in Star Trek. I mean, I could chat to him for an hour and we'd have a lovely conversation, but this is, with you being able to connect you two together is, it's like electricity in a room, it's
Well, I'll tell you this much. This is how I feel about it. And I hope that this doesn't happen, because I feel like it's coming on. I've met some pretty incredible people. I've been doing this a long time. I've traveled. I've been to 45 countries. We've performed in 38 countries. I've met some big stars, some famous people, from politics to sports to music to acting. And the only person that ever made me cry when I met them was BB King. When I met BB King, I cried. I cried. I was like a little child, and I feel that coming on. That's how powerful and important.
I'm misting up here.
And I feel like I could cry, and I'm hoping I don't, because I'd be really embarrassed if I do, but I might. That's how special LeVar Burton is to me.
Wow. Well, it's going to mean a lot to him as well, because I'm sure he gets fans come up there. You go to these conferences and it's fans gushing, but to hear, because you're such a workaholic as well, so maybe there's other aspects that you've his values that you've embodied, and we all need these people to look up to, and to be able to tell them how much they mean to us is a real great thing.
If nothing else happens, you facilitating the opportunity for me to be able to do that is one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me. So thank you.
Well, it does get better than that, because we're going to make a song about it.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's good.
Yeah.
But I just really thank you for reaching out to me, and thank you for facilitating this whole thing. It really is a special day.
Believe me, I get a thrill from it. I did 100 interviews myself, and it's a lot of Jack. I interviewed everyone, I got to speak to great people, but there was something missing, and it's this, even if you're the best, if you're the number one podcast host or the number one interview, you can't be a fan of everyone, so these interviews now, these conversations, people come for the songs, but then they stay for these wonderful conversations, because it's kind of, the song is even immaterial now, I mean, it's 3 minutes of fun, whatever, but these conversations, this inspiration is what I'm sure a lot of people get from it as well, and not just look at him as the Star Trek actor, but we'll get to see him through your eyes for the next hour.
Well, that is it. The whole thing is exciting and nerve-wracking, actually.
Mm-hmm.
LeVar is, well, I mean, let's face it, through reading Rainbow and everything that he's done, is probably one of the most well-read people on the planet.
Yeah.
I just don't want to sound like an imbecile when he comes on.
So do you still read a lot? Are you still?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's become like, I'm not a person that's big on New Year's resolutions, but I have made it my New Year's resolution to, I do a lot of reading on my phone. I download books on my phone, my iPad, and we listen to a lot of books on tape as we're traveling around. But my New Year's resolution this year is to get more hard copies of books and read them page by page. I think that your mind connects in a different way when you actually have
definitely,
and I want to get back to that more. It's tough sometimes when you're traveling with some heavy books. It's easy to grab your iPad, your phone, and read that way, and that's definitely better than nothing. But I want to pick up some hard books. I want to read, turn pages. I want to write. I want to write with a pen on paper. That's something I want to do. The next record I want written on paper. I want to take a pen and use my hand, and I want to scratch it out. Ink.
Well, I saw in your last album you recorded on the best technology available in the 1950s.
That's right. We like to use the old school. I'm sitting here. I'm looking at some of my stuff. I've got 1930s technology right here. I've got back there on, you can see I got guitars on the wall, 1930s.
Yeah. Well, here he is, the man himself.
Rev,
Hey, how's it going?
what's going on, brother?
Oh man, there he is. Levar, I was talking to Jack last night, and I said I feel like I'm not worthy to call you Levar, Mr. Burton, Levar. I don't know,
Mr.
Lieutenant.
Burton is my father, and he's not on this call.
Wonderful. Well, if nothing else comes of this whole thing, I told Jack, I said, if I get the opportunity to tell Levar how much he's meant to me in my life, then this whole thing will be a positive thing. And I also told him, and I'm telling you this right now, I'm going to get out of the way. I'm going to say it again for the people, is that I have managed I've traveled the world. I've been to 45 countries. I've played in 39. I have met some of the most amazing people on this planet, big stars from the NBA to music to actors. And the only person I ever met that I literally cried like a child was BB King. And when I'm King, I cried like a child. And it may happen again. That's how I feel about you. So I'm going to try really hard to keep it together. But so my whole life, I've not existed in a world that hasn't been touched by the wonderful creativity and the inspirational work of Levar Burton. So I don't know a world before. It's my whole life has been made better thanks to the work that you've done. So thank you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. You are an extraordinary musician. Extraordinary.
To hear you say that is absolutely just, I don't even know what to say. I'm speechless. And I'm a person that is not ever speechless. I'm very rarely without words. But thank you so much. There we go. Now we're talking. Now we're talking. I love it. I love it. All right,
so how does this work, Jack? What do we do here?
Well, it's just chat. Yeah, it's
pretty
straight.
Oh, wow. That's it.
Yeah. I asked the same thing. I said, is there an outline? And he said, no, we're just going to chat.
Yeah.
Just sitting around a table. And I said, well, we can do that. That's easy.
Absolutely.
I guess I want to start. I can say something. I want to start by saying that one thing I would love to find out is in I was telling Jack this. There are a lot of phenomenal actors out there and artists that have done some great things, but it just seems like everything you've done has been positively inspirational. From of course the legendary Kunta Kinte up to now, you're still an educator with the Sound Detectives, and I mean, it just seems like every single thing you've done has been positive. And my biggest question, so what I wanted to know is, did you seek these out, or did it happen? Like, did Kunta Kinte come and that role, did that elevate something inside you where you were like, I have to do these positive things? Was it the ancestor speaking and you said, now I have to seek out things that are more positive? So I guess the question is did Kunta Kinte find you? Did you find that? And did these things happen, or did you just rise to the occasion every time one of these roles came and you made them inspiration?
You know, no one has ever really framed it the way you have, which is in fact and indeed how I see it and have experienced it. I know my life has been kissed by God. I only have to look back at my life for absolute concrete evidence of that truth. And Roots was the beginning of that. And yes, it did allow me, at least on a personal as well as artistic level, to want to make contributions akin to that. I recognized really right away that I could not and should not expect to make that kind of an impact every time out, or even ever again. But the bar was set, and it caused me to want to reach higher in terms of the kinds of projects that I did. But roots came to me. I was a student at USC studying theater, but roots was my first professional audition.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
And Reading Rainbow came to me. They sought me out as a host, and it made sense to me. And it made a lot of sense to me on several levels, and for more than one reason. My mom was a teacher, an educator. Reading was mandatory. Speaking the King's English was mandatory, right? But Roots really showed me the power of the medium. And so I considered that what better way to use these airwaves, this power, than to connect kids, emerging readers, with literature and imprint them in an indelible way, so that a child who could read became a reader for life.
Yeah.
Star Trek, same thing. I mean, I did everything happens for a reason. Rev, I believe you are aware of that truth. And years before Roots, in the early 80s, I mean, before Star Trek, in the early 80s, I did a TV movie, and one of the producers was a man named Bob Justman. Well, I knew that Robert H. Justman was one of the producers on the original Star Trek, and I would pump Bob for stories about what it was like making the show. And then flash forward to, he's at Paramount in 1987 working with Gene on the Next Generation reboot, and I get a call from Bob, and he says, "I know you've never done a television series, but would you be interested in being in Star Trek? We're rebooting it." And my answer was immediate: who do I need to kill? And it was a matter of really competing for that job. And I won the role. It's all been shaped, however. You mentioned the ancestors, and they are a part of it. I'm really excited. Tomorrow night, I'm going to go see my Finding Your Roots episode with Henry Louis Gates.
Wow.
I'm the day that we shot the reveal changed my life. I am not the same person I was before I learned this information about
See that.
I'm irrevocably changed. Irrevocably changed. I thought that all of my impulse toward using the medium for education, it comes from my mother's side of the family. Like I said, my mother was an English teacher. She was a social worker. And I don't know all that much about my father's side of the family, or at least I didn't until Skip, broke it down for me. What I know about myself is that, my ancestors had a stake in this experiment. Now I have receipts. I've got receipts. I've got an ancestor who was a member of the Arkansas state legislature. I have an ancestor that founded a school in Arkansas that is still in existence.
Wow.
So I get that on a cellular level, Rev, as opposed to cellular, on a cellular level. This is what I signed up for. And I ask myself all the time, what could I possibly have done in a previous lifetime to deserve the life that I have now? The opportunity to serve and to, and to be fulfilled, right? And all the while to do something that I really love, storytelling, and to take care of my family in the process. It's a tremendous blessing.
Well, every time then, I mean, every time that these roles came to you, then the answer is that to a certain extent, you rose to the occasion. That's what I get. You rose to the occasion. You know, Jack, I was telling him because he's British, so he doesn't know. I was able to live my entire life in a world that roots existed, that where Kunta Kinte was able to become a hero who exposed the realities of slavery. Americans before that were under an impression of some kind of mythology that was very much sugar coated. After Kunta Kinte, if they remain under that blinded perception, it is willfully. Kunta Kinte was able to expose the realities and also the humanity. And so my whole life I've existed in that America, right? I don't I don't know my whole life has been that. My America was better because of that. So I say, you know, starting there, I don't know where this country would be if not. I don't know how they were able to create Roots and put it on network television at that time. But the fact that it was able to happen, and the fact that you were able to come in and create this hero. People talk about various heroes that you know, stand for freedom. There's been a ton of fictional and non-fictional movies created about these heroes that stand for freedom. And Kunta Kinte is artistically one of the greatest. But apart from artistically, when it comes down to exposing that reality, Kunta Kinte might be the greatest. I mean, I mean, it's hard to explain to someone that doesn't know, but the entire American landscape was changed by that. The entire American landscape. But then in my life, the first time I see Levar Burton, it was a child, was reading Rainbow. And reading Rainbow, when I was telling Jack, I always say this. I said my mom taught me to read when I was by the time I was 3, I was reading and reading books, encyclopedias. I was a voracious reader. And I get to school and hardly anybody else can read. I'm looking around. I thought I was an alien. And then I could come home and I could turn on Reading Rainbow, and here is this cool guy who makes reading fun and makes it okay to read. You know, it made me feel like reading was not just you know, something that I did or had to do or whatever. It made it fun. It made it interesting because here's this cool guy, right, who's on television every day. And Levar, I spent every day with you at that time. Every day. Reading Rainbow was every day. I watched it every day. You were in our home every day. And then at some point, Next Generation is on. And I was also obsessed with Next Generation. And you know, I explained to Jack when I was born, I was born folded in half, breech, but instead of feet first, head first, how you're supposed to be. Instead of feet first, I was butt first. And I was folded in half the entire time that I was inside my mother. And because of that, I was born with severe hip dysplasia. And in fact, my legs were up by my head for almost a year. I could talk before I could walk. And it was something that affected my entire life. I go to school and I kind of waddle when I walk. When I ran, it was really bad. So, and I didn't realize that this was a problem. You know, I didn't realize there was something wrong with me until the other kids let me know. And I go to try to play sports with the other kids, and here I am, this young American boy. I'm supposed to play sports, right? And it's not in the cards for me. I had a doctor. I was telling Jack, I had this doctor. They made me strip down to my underwear. I was wearing Superman underwear. I'll never forget it. And I'm walking up and down the public hallway in the doctor's office, and all these nurses and people are watching me do this. And I was very, very embarrassed and self-conscious. And the doctor comes in, he says, "Son, you're never going to win any races." Well, then I turn on the TV and in my mind, because of, you know, the child's mind, you almost think of them as two people. You know, there's Reading Rainbow Levar, and then there's Geordie LaForge.
Mhm.
And Geordie LaForge is a person who, he is the smartest person on the ship, and he is the most even keel of all the people on the ship. He is, but he has this disability, and it's okay. Not only is it okay, but it's better than okay. He's still a hero, and I don't think he realized just how important that was to people, and it was important to me. I mean, I could look at Geordie LaForge, and I could think, well, Geordie has a disability, but it's not a problem. And I thought to myself, well, my legs aren't perfect, but my hands, maybe I can do something with my hands. And then when the
Well,
guitar came to me, it was it was it was fine. I thought, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to do this. And it's okay that my legs aren't, I'll never win your races. Okay, whatever. That's okay. And I mean, I don't think you realize just how inspirational that was too. I mean, Kunta Kinte is always going to be there, and it changed the American landscape. But uh, I don't know how, I don't know how many children were encouraged to read by Reading Rainbow, and I don't think you realize just how important Geordie LaForge was. In the
mm,
same, I'm a Star Trek fanatic. I've seen every live action episode of every Star Trek series and all the movies. It accounts for about 32 days of television watching, which I'm a little bit embarrassed to say.
you
But
know the figure because you've had the lived experience.
I love Star Trek. When Star Trek is at its best, it is philosophical, and it's really about us now. And you know, one of my favorite episodes is season 5, episode 13, "The Masterpiece Society."
Mhm.
It's one of the times when we get to see Geordie, the hero. And I know you know this episode, but it's the episode where basically they encounter these eugenicists. It's an entire society of eugenicists that essentially kill people before they are allowed to be born.
Find their gift, right?
And because they have, maybe they're born blind, or they're, you know, something they deem to be an unworthy genetic trait, and they are ultimately saved by the genius of Geordie LaForge. And it's a wonderful episode, and it has a wonderful story, and you know, everything in it is great. And even some of the people on the ship are at first almost taken in by their society, but ultimately we are all taught a valuable lesson that and it's so true in our society. We see it all the time.
Everybody has something to contribute. There isn't a
Everybody.
soul born that does not come here with an intention that is linked to a gift or a trait that will be a benefit to others.
That's wonderful. I mean, it's nonstop though, right? I mean, we look at you start thinking about it. You can name a ton of blind people that have done wonderful things. You know, Stephen Hawking. What if we had decided that someone with Stephen Hawking's abilities we were going to either discount them, or you know, throw them away? And you know, one of the greatest minds in our lifetime. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And I guess, you know, here's another question for you. There's something else I've written in my notes, and it goes back a little bit. It's about reading.
Mm.
I have always in my mind, and I'm sure that you have too, because so this is not going to probably be, you know, out there, but um, Kunta Kinte uh, would not have been allowed to read. It would have been against the law. Uh, Torture, abuse, death would have
Death
been the
on the table.
would have been, you know, what the consequences for reading. Uh, that has to, in the back of your mind, have been something that pushed you toward that too. It had to be.
It is one of the it's one of the signposts that I recognize as being a part of the purpose that my soul came in with in this lifetime, right? To have been able to span the entire continuum of Black people in America, from slavery to the stars. And I consider that Levar, the Reading Rainbow guy, is right in the middle of that continuum, right? It's an extraordinary trajectory to contemplate, and I claim it. I own it. I mean, it's it's my life, and I can't help but to as you pointed out, I can't help but want to rise to that energy signature, right? I have no choice, and I know on a deep level that was a part of my soul's plan coming into this realm this time around.
It's something I've always thought of in the back of my mind. It's like Kunta Kinte would never have been allowed to read. It would have been a crime,
Yep.
punishable by absurd inhumanity.
Mhm.
And Kunta Kinte taught more American children about reading than maybe anybody else that has
Isn't
ever
that
lived.
wild? Isn't that wild? You know how that works?
It's
That's the power. That's the power. That's the power. That's the power of storytelling. It's the power of spirit.
well, it's and you rose to it. There's not a lot of people that could stand in front of a bunch of kids and make reading cool. And I guess how did you do it? I mean, that's I mean, is it, I was thinking about that last night. I'm sure. I mean, the program ran for how many seasons? How long did Reading Rainbow was Reading Rainbow on the air, actually?
23, 24, something like that.
Yeah. And how did you, Levar Burton, convince all of these children that reading was so cool? How'd you do it? And I can't get children to want to read books. How did you do it? How did you convince it? How did you stand up there and do it? How did you figure that out? How did you crack that code?
Very early on, like right at the beginning of Reading Rainbow, there was a PBS event where I knew I was going to meet Fred Rogers for the first time, Mr. Rogers, and I was excited because I didn't grow up on Mr. Rogers, but I was certainly aware of him, right? Even in 1983, when we began Reading Rainbow, he was already iconic, right? And I was shocked because I was expecting, now I get to meet the real guy, because that's got to be a character that he's playing. And come to find out, no, that Fred was that present. When you were in Fred's presence, he was not looking around to, you were his focus. And I had studied for the Catholic priesthood early in my life, and Fred was a Presbyterian minister. And so we met on on the idea that service is part of why we're here. And it was Fred who really encouraged me to be my authentic self on camera, and to not be afraid to use the television show as a pulpit, in a sense, in terms of really communicating a message that has value to your audience. And so that's what I tried to do. And it caused me to really put a lot of time, effort, and energy into figuring out who my authentic self is.
Wow.
And then I discovered that it was that it made sense to talk to one child, right? Talk to one child.
The idea of Fred Rogers and the Levar Burton meeting in my mind feels like the heavens would open up and would save us all. That's what it feels like to me. But in some ways, maybe it did.
Fred was a bona fide saint, in my opinion. He was a bodhisattva. He was an enlightened being.
That's it. You always get that sense, right? It's so amazing to hear that.
That's who that man was. That's exactly who he was. And I spent time with Fred over the years, and cherish every moment. That man was a saint.
What else did you learn from him, spending time with him?
Those are the highlights, really. Being yourself, being authentic, the importance of kindness, right? How important it is, and how important it is to speak to children as human beings, small human beings, but human beings nonetheless. And I was determined to not talk down to kids, to not pander to them, right? That there is a level of respect in the dynamic that is necessary for that to work, right? And by work I mean to bring value to the audience you serve.
Who are some other people that you met in this lifetime, this career, that have been inspirational, inspiring? Who are some of the other people that?
Alex Haley.
Yeah.
Alex Haley.
Great story, of course.
Great storyteller, one of the best ever. You know, when I read Alex's words, I hear his voice, I hear his rhythm, I hear his cadence in my head. You know, very few. Well, I don't know that. I don't have that opportunity. I experienced it when I read Patrick Stewart's autobiography, and I guess now it's as a result of having known both of these men so intimately well, and knowing their voices. It's sort of a three-dimensional experience reading their words, right? And then Gene Roddenberry. I refer to these three men as my storytelling mentors: Fred, Alex, and Gene. I was a huge Star Trek fan as a kid. You know, I grew up in the 70s in Sacramento, California. And Star Trek was one of the few places on TV I could see Black people who were equal in a society, right? Seeing Nichelle Nichols on the bridge of that ship meant for me, when the future came, that I'd be there, that there'd be a place for me.
She was an office. She was an
Yeah.
officer.
She had power and she had agency. Absolutely.
And Jack may not know this because, you know, being British, but the first time Americans saw an interracial kiss was Star Trek on television in the United States of America. And Star Trek has often opened a lot of doors. And so, yeah. Now what about Nichelle Nichols? Did you get to meet her? Was she just as incredible as you'd hoped she'd be?
Just a lovely, lovely, lovely woman, lovely human being, graceful, elegant. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, Jack, you know, for people that are outside the United States, I took this media, like, it was like a cultural criticism class at one point. And the professor said, what I want you to do is I want you to find someone with cable television. You know, there's hundreds of channels, flip through. And every time you see a Black or brown person, I want you to write down what they're doing. I want you to pay attention to what they're doing. And this would have been, you know, when I was in going to school, it was early 2000s, right? I forget the exact year. And when at that time, which isn't that long ago, at that time we did this, and we had to write down what they were doing, and it was horrifying how often it was either sports, the villain, you know, basically it was very rarely an officer, very rarely the main character, even at that time. I did this recently, and it's better. It's better. It's thanks to people like Nichelle Nichols and LeVar Burton,
Gene Roddenberry
having that forethought to imagine a future where this is possible.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things about Star Trek that's so great. That's one of the things I love about Star Trek. It's supposed to be the future we could have, right? It's the future that we should have. It is, and then when it's really about us, which it always is, it's breaking down these philosophical concepts and ideas that allow us to kind of really get introspective and look at who we are. And it's a very powerful show. I don't know if people realize. I always say this, and not to knock Star Wars, but usually there's like the Star Wars versus Star Trek. Star Wars is about a space religion and sword fighting. Star Trek is philosophical, and Star Trek has helped to redefine and open doors, and has really shined a light on our society. I don't think people. I mean, some people realize this, but I think when they talk about Star Wars versus Star Trek, I think that gets lost in that. And it to me, it's like, look, it's not even the same thing.
I think both franchises kind of inspire us to rise to our highest level of expression, right? However, it's really baked into the DNA of Trek, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's baked
100%.
into the DNA.
100%. It is. It's there from even in the original series, you know.
Oh,
you go back
absolutely.
up to
Absolutely.
Discovery is
Yeah.
is continuing to do it. You know, that's part of it. It's what it's always done. That's well, it always makes me laugh when you hear people like criticize Discovery, and it's like, did you not pay attention to the other Star Trek? Like, were you not? What were you watching? Here's I guess I wanted to ask you this, and it goes back a little bit to your beginnings.
Mm.
I know that you went to seminary.
Mhm.
You were going to become a priest, and my question to you is, because I'll just full disclosure that I was on a similar path. That was what I started to go to school for seminary. I had considered becoming a minister. That's why I got the nickname Rev. All my friends called me that. I was obsessed at a certain point in my life, and I went to school and I studied. And when you go to church and there's all this fellowship and singing and pitch-in dinners, and you leave with this energy. And then when I got to those classes and actually opened up that book and really started studying, I went, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, now this is different than I thought this was. And it changed the course of my life, having gone down that. And I was curious, like, at what point, like, did you change paths? And I guess, what did you learn from that?
First of all, when I was in the sixth grade, my nickname was Preacher. Rev.
Wow. Unbelievable.
And so, having entered that environment, right? So young, I was 13 when I entered the seminary. I was convinced. I mean, I had the vocation. That was what I was going to do. I decided to become a priest when I was 8. Priests, as it turns out, looking back on it as an adult, I can now track the thinking, the subconscious response of me as a young kid. Priests were the most positive male role models I had in my life, and I wanted to emulate that. I wanted to serve in that way. However, being immersed in that culture, I was able to discover the priests were just men. They were human beings, and they had faults and foibles just like everybody else. And that was a lesson that was reinforced in my relationship with Gene Roddenberry. Gene taught me that all of our heroes are human, and putting them on a pedestal comes at a cost. And so being at St. Pius and living in that environment caused me to and then I had a teacher. I had a layman teacher, a man named Lee Bartlett, and he taught me all my favorite subjects. He was the English teacher, he's the philosophy teacher, he was also the drama coach. And St. Pius is where I discovered really theater arts. And Lee, had a tremendous influence on me. He wasn't a priest. He wasn't a brother. He was a layman. He was a man who lived in the world. He was married, had a kid, right? And it opened up the possibility in my sophomore year there that there was more for me to explore in the world, and that perhaps I could do it more freely and unfettered without a collar. And that's when I decided not to become a priest and to become an actor. It was one of those moments, I think a lot of us have sort of epiphany moments in the bathroom. And that was it was one of those moments. I was standing in the mirror, looking at myself and figure out, well, so I wanted to do this one thing for as long as I can remember. And now it no longer holds that importance for me. What am I going to do with my life? And I had gone through this physical transformation. One of my other nicknames when I was a kid was Poppin' Fresh. I was a roly-poly kid. And the summer between my freshman and sophomore year at St. Pius, I grew. And all of a sudden, it's like the ugly duckling. I discovered I was a swan. I wasn't a duck at all, right? And in the mirror, I thought, you know what? I think I can do this. I mean, this makes sense. So I graduated from St. Pius with a full scholarship to USC to study theater, auditioned for Roots as a sophomore in my second year of college, and never looked back.
That's incredible. So I'm just I'm floored by this. How many productions did you do there before you are in Roots? How many performances had you done by the time you do this? One?
Actually, two. I was in a senior production. I played a butler, but I created a backstory that he had been in the war and he was gravely injured, and I gave him a limp. And I walked on stage twice, but you sensed that there was something about this guy. Both times he walked on stage, that he had a life that was deeper than what we were seeing. And then that was in my sophomore year. In my freshman year, I had auditioned for the main stage, and walking into the room, the head of the department at that time, a man named Alex Siegel, who really made his bones as a television director in the days of live TV, Playhouse 90 and projects like that. And Alex said to me, well, of course, there's only one role you can audition for, and that's the butler. So I then my sophomore years, I'll play the butler, but I'll imbue him with dignity. I'll imbue him with something that I can latch on to, something that I feel like I can bring to the table. And then in my sophomore year, I got a lead in the main stage spring musical, Oklahoma. The director was a man named Ernie Saraceno, and he had played Ali Hakim on Broadway, and I got cast as Ali Hakim. Hello, Kino, how are you? Bill Parker, damn glad to meet you. And we were doing Oklahoma when David Wolper, and it was the casting process for Roots was insane. It lasted for 4 or 5 months. My first exposure to it was in a class. One day, one of the faculty members came in and he said, we're putting a notice on the call board here. There are some people looking for young Black actors. There were 3 of us in the drama department at SC at that time. And we all went to this, go to this address and see the people there. And then I got asked to come back and read with the casting director. And then March 27th, 1976, I was screen tested. And then that screen test went back and forth from the offices of ABC in New York to Los Angeles, and they kept passing the buck. Nobody wanted to make the decision. They'd screen tested 3 of us. Everybody liked my audition, my screen test, but nobody wanted to go out on a limb and make the decision to hire the actor who had no previous professional experience at all. And I get the calculus, they're hanging. Roots was 12 hours. And unless you bought in the first 2, then you weren't tuning in for hours 3 to the end. So there was a lot riding on it, but I was unaware of all of that because the first scene I read in the sides, I knew who this kid was. And another milestone and another indication that I'm in the right place at the right time. My freshman year, I'd done a term paper on Malcolm X. And so I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, written by Alex Haley.
Yeah.
So I knew who Alex was, right? These things.
It's crazy to me. Okay, I'm sitting here with the Roots itself. I don't know how this show was able to be made at this time in America and put on when there's 3 channels. There's 3 channels, and it's going to be
and PBS and PBS.
And it's so heavy and real, and heavy and real isn't necessarily something that is notorious for irregular television, especially at that time. So they went out on several limbs. They're going to create this series. It is heavy. It is heavy in all the ways that it can be heavy. And then they're going to take a chance on this guy that he's done Oklahoma. Well, they must have seen something. I guess we all got to see it too, right?
Alex and Stan Margulies, and I didn't know this until later. I didn't know they were in the house. They came to the final performance. And my mom was there. I'm from Sacramento, so my mom had driven down for the final weekend's worth of performances. And I had this meeting on the Monday morning at ABC, and they had postponed the casting decision so many times. And she said, on Sunday, she said, "Well, do you want me to wait?" Right? And I said, "No, Mom, get in the car in the morning, drive home. I'll call you in the afternoon when you arrive in Sacramento," because there were no cell phones, "and let you know how the meeting went." And I borrowed a car and drove to Century City in Los Angeles to the offices of ABC Television Network. And I walked into the room, and there were all these suits, ABC executives, Brandon Stoddard, Lou Rudolph, Alex was there, David Wolper, and Stan Margulies, the line producer. And it was just small talk for, a few minutes. And then they excused me, and I went outside and sat down on the floor, making myself comfortable. And a few minutes later, Stan came out and said, "Pack your bags, kid. You're going to Savannah." What I didn't know was that this was a showdown. This was, the producers really, really, really wanted me. ABC had cold feet, and Wolper and Haley and Margulies said it's either him or nothing, right? He's the one. Wow. He's the one we want. And so the idea that Alex and my mom were in the same room for that final performance of Oklahoma and didn't meet, but when we were shooting Roots, Alex recognized the importance of this moment to my mother, and he knew I couldn't afford it. He bought my mother a ticket to come to Savannah and be there for the filming for a week. And, it's just amazing the machinations of life, I don't believe in coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidence.
And that's an awesome gesture he did too. Yeah. That's here. This is a kind of a heavy question. And it's something me personally, I'll have fans will go, "Hey, why don't you sing that song more?" And I sometimes I hesitate to say, I'd be like, "Well, because that song, I wrote that, it makes me feel bad. I have to live inside that song. And when I perform it, it makes me feel bad. And sometimes I don't want to feel that way. I don't have to get inside that song." And my guess is, as an actor, when you have to get inside a performance and you have to live that for days on end, it probably can really affect you, make you sick at a deep level. And I'm guessing that Kunta Kinte had many days like that where you felt that. What was the hardest thing about having to embody that and live it? What was the hardest thing about having to do that, especially as a young man?
There were two scenes at the end of hour 4. After running away a couple of times, Kunta is recaptured and whipped. And that scene was very difficult. I was, because of the, the physicality of it, I was looking forward to it. And then when push came to shove, I was standing on an apple box with my back to this man, and he had a whip in his hand, and, he was an expert, and, his job was to, lay it in and wrap it around my body. And then, the intention was that the makeup artist would, in between, lashes, come in and with a syringe full of stage blood, and then finally there was so much of it that every time the whip wrapped around it, it looked like it cut skin anew. But on the day that we shot that scene, I couldn't make myself be comfortable standing there with my back to this man. I was jumping and flinching way before the lash ever got there. And so they recognized the futility of it, and put a pin in it. And then they brought this guy back another day, and they scheduled the scene for the afternoon. And starting in the morning, I spent 4 hours with this man. And he just demonstrated to me how good he was. And it encouraged in me a sense of trust that he knew what he was doing, and that I was safe in his hands, literally in his hands. That was one. The other is the Middle Passage. They built the hold of the ship in a warehouse outside of Savannah, Georgia. And the night before we started, we shot in there for 3 days. The night before, Alex brought me a Galleys copy of the novel. The novel hadn't come out yet. This was May of 1976. And he had put a bookmark beginning with the Middle Passage, and I stayed up all night reading. All night. And I remember like the first scene on the first day. It was a scene that we had done in the screen test, where Kunta is in the hold, and he has a conversation with the wrestler, who Kunta was just devastated to find out he had been captured too. And he has a conversation with the wrestler, a mentor figure for him. And he asked the wrestler about the moon. Do you think that moon is the same moon that my family sees? And he expressed that he hated to think that his family could see that moon, but could not see me. I remember shooting that scene and maybe a couple of other moments, but I don't remember much else. And my experience of it is that on some level, psychically, I checked out, and the ancestors came in to protect me, and that was powerful.
Well, there's some tough scenes in that movie to watch, but the boat scenes are some of they're heavy. I can't imagine. Yeah, at the very least, even as you still had to be on that set in those, I don't know what they'd even be called, as shelves.
They call it a stack. There was a loose stack. There was a loose stack and a packed stack. Packed stack, you were on your side. Loose stack, you were on your back.
I don't know if you've ever been in a boat when a storm came, when the weather is rough. You cannot spend that long and not encounter rough seas. I mean, that in a perfect day is unimaginable. But I've often thought, after, especially having been in boats in rough weather. Just I don't know. It's no wonder so many didn't even make the
It
make.
is almost unimaginable to me what they went through and survived. Not only survived, but managed to land here, and still, in spite of all of the pain, all of the hardship, all of the torture, to instill in their children and their children who oftentimes were stolen from them, but to instill a sense of hope that there would be a better day. And that better day has led to my being here, right? The saying, I am my ancestors' wildest dream.
I have often thought about just so many ways the horror and the insidiousness of all that has it will come in and it will seep in, and you'll find it poisoning in ways that are almost sometimes are hard to see, and sometimes they're obvious. Sometimes they're hard to see. But Jack, for people that are outside the United States, you watch Roots and you think to yourself, there's like this undercurrent of revenge. And what is amazing to me is to think that all of these the children and the children's of these people, revenge is not on the tongue ever.
It's not in our hearts. What we want, what we have always sought, is equality and equanimity.
Mm-hmm.
If we had been bent on revenge, it would have been over a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. It's
and I think that's the fear deep down inside. That's the fear that continues to motivate the kind of thinking and behaving like we are currently in a pretty dark time. As far as we've come, there's so much retrenchment, and the methodologies are insidious, to take the word woke and to make it pejorative and derogatory. Right? I want to be awake. I want the light in my life. I don't want to live in darkness. Right?
Well, and it also, but it's a term that was in a lot of ways, as things often are, was kind of usurped and stolen.
Oh, it's co-opted, without question.
Taken, and it doesn't even mean like what people think it means. It never meant that anyway. It happens all the time with things where they are, once again taken.
Want to ban books, to want to censor and alter what we teach our children about the period of the enslavement of Black people in America, so as not to make them feel uncomfortable. The fuck out of here.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And let's face it, right? When has the truth ever been a problem? Right? I mean, the truth always brings to light and always helps, right? Mm-hmm. So how can ever being blinded to realities ever be a problem, right? I say this a lot, and it's a terrible thing, but I always say facts are the asshole, not me. Mm-hmm. And all the time you hear.
Say that one more time. Say it again.
Facts are the asshole, not me. But it's true in that sometimes the reality is not pretty.
Yeah.
But we are going to turn our eyes to it. And it also just because history is true and that there's this reality, it's funny to me how often people get so personally offended by true history. And I want to say, like, to me, it almost seems a little bit oh, like, doth protest too much, right? I mean, it's like if you aren't living this way, it's like, what is inside you that makes you feel so personally attacked by understanding the realities of our history? Because history oftentimes is ugly. We live right now, and people will talk about, they'll say, oh, it's terrible. I mean, things and you are so correct that we're seeing regressions here and there, but we still live in the most peaceful time to be a human being in the history of humanity. And so we have always moved toward this. And I believe that eventually, and you'll probably be able to quote it better, but it's like Martin Luther King said that what is it, the arc of
the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice.
There you go. Exactly. And I think that it does. I believe that in my heart that it does, but it does not. It's not helped along if we lie about it. If we don't
try to suppress the truth,
or try to suppress the truth. Exactly. That's not helpful, right? Yeah. What's helpful is to look it in its face, because sometimes all people want is you to say, I understand you. I feel you. I believe where you came from. And I see you. And that's it.
We just all want to be seen.
And if that sometimes it's all it takes.
Common impulse in humanity. We want to be seen, recognized by our fellow men.
And how can you be seen if your true history is being suppressed? I tell you, it's baffling to me. You hear these people that go, you got to do your research, and I think, well, I have done research because I read books. I'm researching on the internet. On YouTube is not research. Reading tweets is not research. Reading your phone is not research. That's not research. Google, it feeds you. People don't know this. You do a Google search and it's going to give you the results based on your search history. That's not reality. That's not reality. So you can't even do a Google search. If you want to do research, go to a library, read a book.
Up a book. Take a look.
And it makes me so angry anymore, the way people, they refuse to listen to experts in a field. And there was a certain period of time where if someone was an expert, we deferred to them because they had a lifetime at it. They have studied it and truly studied it, not watched a couple of videos and read a couple of tweets. They truly studied it. It would be like me sitting here and saying to you, well, now next time you act, I really think you should. The next time you act, that'd be ridiculous. I would be a fool. And that's what so often our society we're doing now. We are sitting here and we're trying to pontificate on the internet because we can. And I think it really is kind of an embarrassing thing. I remember when I first heard about the internet when I was a little kid, I thought, well, this is going to end all wars. How can we how are we ever going to convince another person to go to war and hurt each other when we can see each other on the internet? Wow, I was wrong there. And it's because the internet is controlled by algorithms and people that do not have anyone's best interest at heart. And it's more important now to open up a book than ever.
I agree.
It really is. It's more important now. Kids they're probably reading. They're reading their phone. They need to be reading books.
Guys, I've got to jump off. I've got a call with some writers for the Kimmel show. We're gonna do a skit on banned books on Friday. So, Rev, before I go, can I just say, I don't have higher praise than to recognize, identify, recognize, and to call out mastery in any given field or endeavor. And you, sir, are a master of the stringed instrument. You're a master.
Thank you, Levar. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything that you've done. We're all better because you were born. All of us. Thank you so much.
I say the same about you, Rev.
Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll meet again.
I'd love that. I'd
Most
love for
time.
our paths to cross. Can't wait to give you a hug.
And I will be looking out for every single thing you ever do, and I just know that everything you've ever done has been so inspirational, wonderful, and I thank you for it.
Thank you, brother.
My heart, and for everybody else that has been touched by it.
Peace and blessings. You too, Jack. Thank you for making this happen. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
All right. Much love, Rev.
Love to you,
Much
Levar.
love.
Thank
Yeah, man. Peace and blessings.
Oh, yeah. You made me cry too. Oh, wow. That's
Thank you, Jack.
no, I didn't realize that he was such an inspirational character. I didn't yeah, it's just
They don't get much more inspiration.
yeah, wow.
A mountain of a soul.
Yeah. Yeah, you really made me want to check out more of his work and see Roots and
You should go watch Roots if you haven't seen it.
yeah.
It'll change you.
Wow.
And his performance, when you look at it and you think to yourself, that guy did one play. Now I know that it's unbelievable. I mean, his performance is masterful. It's as good as anything anyone's ever done. And it's a hard thing to do. And he embodied it and he sold it. And just, I can't even.
Well, like he said, I'm also very spiritual, believe in the reincarnation, and we're just coming in, going out, coming in again, and he's obviously been looking even up to this, and he trained before, and he was meant to be. Doesn't happen by accident. So.
I wanted we were talking about it, and I think that the answer is, and in certain ways, maybe it was fated, and lived up to it all.
Yeah.
And every time.
The ancestors came through that. They wanted that story to be told, and
lived right up to it. What a miracle.
Well, I've been making a lot of notes here, and I think you kept saying rise, rise. So maybe that could be in the song about, coming up to meet the challenge, and yeah.
Yeah, I've got tons of ideas.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we should end on a high note and leave it with that. And yeah. Wow.
Thank you, Jack. We'll reconvene another conversation. Next time we'll be talking music and songs.
Yeah. Okay, brother.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. It was a wonderful episode. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you get that call, are you gonna rise? If you get that call, are you gonna rise? If you hear that cries, are you gonna rise? If you get that call, are you gonna rise? If the children sing, will you harmonize? If the children sing, will you harmonize? If you hear their cries, are you gonna rise? If you hear their song, are you gonna rise? 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 Oh, if fate comes in disguise, will you recognize? If you hear their call, are you gonna rise? If the ancestors call, are you gonna rise? If the ancestors call, are you gonna rise? If you hear their call, are you gonna rise? Oh, it echoes from the skies, are you gonna rise? Oh, it echoes from the skies, are you gonna rise? Oh, the birds and butterflies and all the stars in the skies. If you hear their song, are you gonna rise? 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 Oh, if fate comes in disguise, will you recognize? If you hear their cries, are you gonna rise? Oh, if you hear their cries, are you gonna rise? If you hear their cries, are you gonna rise?
Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the song and the episode. The song will be released next week. It will be available on all streaming platforms, but you can already pre-save. Please support the artists by following them on social media and adding the song to any playlists you have. This is a completely free show, and you've listened this far, so I'd really appreciate it if you could pay us back by clicking like and subscribe. And follow at Podsongs on social media platforms, or subscribe to the newsletter at podsongs.com for special updates. Or just tell the next person you see about this amazing show where musicians interview their idols and write a song about them. The songs are available for download from the Podsongs website as well, which pays a lot more than the 0.00 whatever we get from Spotify. You can also email me at jack@podsongs.com to give feedback, suggest an artist and guest combos you'd like to hear, or just say hello. We're a listener-supported show, and I'd love to hear from you. A final thanks to my researchers, Dori Verbo and Rosa Marino, my producer, Maurizio Sanicola of Goldmine Records, and musicians Massimino Vozza and Luigi Falcione. The next episode will be out soon. In the meantime, you can listen to more amazing episodes in the archives. Until then, have a great day.